The desert had a way of swallowing sound, as if the earth itself wished to keep its secrets buried. Dr. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of the excavation trench, his boots sinking into loose sand, eyes fixed on the monolithic slab half exposed by the dig team. The structure did not belong there, not among the ruins of crumbled sandstone temples and weather-worn columns. Its surface was metallic, too perfect to have been carved by human hands, its edges crisp as though forged yesterday. He wiped the sweat from his brow, but his hand lingered on his face, more from disbelief than heat. For all his years spent chasing myths across continents, he had never encountered anything so deliberately alien. He crouched by the slab and traced the symbols etched into its surface. They weren't random patterns, they bore an order, a rhythm, a script of some kind. Marcus's mind leapt at the challenge. Languages were his obsession. They whispered the truth of civilizations long turned to dust, and sometimes they lied. He had grown adept at hearing both. This script, however, was like nothing catalogued in his lifetime. The strokes curved and twisted in ways that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, as though the language resisted being pinned down. He sketched the markings quickly, knowing the desert wind could obscure them with a single gust. The sound of boots crunching sand broke his concentration. Colonel David Rourke descended the trench ladder with the certainty of a man who believed the ground should always hold steady beneath him. His uniform, pressed even here in the wilderness, made him look out of place among the dust-caked archaeologists, yet his presence demanded attention. He was older than Marcus by a decade, with a jaw set in perpetual readiness and eyes that measured everything in terms of threat or advantage. "You've found something," Rourke said, his voice clipped, carrying authority rather than curiosity. Marcus tapped his notebook, unwilling to hand over too much. A script. Advanced. Structured. Possibly a written language predating known civilizations. Rourke studied the monolith, though not with Marcus's scholarly wonder. "Does it say anything useful?" The words stung. Marcus inhaled slowly. "Useful depends on perspective. To me, every mark is invaluable. To you, perhaps less so." The colonel's mouth twitched, though whether it was irritation or amusement Marcus could not tell. "You'll forgive me if I prefer clear answers. The world isn't paying for this excavation out of academic charity." Marcus closed his notebook with deliberate care. He disliked the man instantly, though he could not deny the necessity of his presence. Military oversight was the cost of unearthing anything that might touch upon national or global security. Still, the tension between their motives bristled like static in the dry desert air. That night, under floodlights and restless shadows, Marcus returned to the slab. He began the painstaking work of aligning glyphs, searching for recurring structures. As the hours stretched, patterns emerged, clusters that hinted at a warning, or perhaps a proclamation. His pulse quickened when he recognized a repeated sequence. He whispered the sounds he imagined it might represent, and the syllables rolled from his tongue like stones dislodged from a cliff. The sequence appeared again and again, children of flesh. He leaned back, unsettled. Ancient cultures often mythologized humanity, but this was different. The phrase did not carry reverence, it carried weight, like a verdict delivered long before its time. At dawn, the camp buzzed with activity. Engineers had uncovered more of the monolith, revealing a jagged crack down its center. Marcus stared into the fracture and saw faint glimmers, as though something beneath the surface still pulsed faintly. He fought the urge to reach out and touch it. Some instincts whispered against it, and he had learned to trust those whispers. Rourke appeared again, flanked by 2 soldiers. "Our scans show this thing isn't just a hunk of rock. It's emitting low-frequency radiation. Nothing dangerous yet, but unusual." Marcus pressed his notes against his chest. "It isn't inert. It was placed here for a reason. Which is why my superiors want to know what it says. Fast." Marcus hesitated, then opened his notebook and pointed at the sequence he had deciphered. "It references us. Humans. The children of flesh. The context suggests anticipation. Possibly even fear." Rourke's eyes narrowed. "Fear of what?" Marcus shook his head. "That's not clear. The rest of the text is fragmented, but it seems to imply humanity itself is the subject of the warning. For the first time, The colonel's expression faltered. He dismissed his soldiers with a curt gesture, then leaned closer. "You're saying aliens left this here to warn others about us?" "I'm saying that interpretation is plausible," Marcus replied, though the word felt too small for the enormity pressing on him. Rourke stood in silence, hands clasped behind his back. The desert wind howled briefly through the camp, scattering sand across their boots. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "If what you're suggesting is true, then this isn't just an archaeological discovery. It's a liability. And liabilities need control." The words settled between them like a shadow. Marcus knew what the colonel meant: military containment, classified reports, suppression of knowledge. The thought made his stomach tighten. That evening, Marcus found himself alone again at the slab, staring at the alien script as if the answers might rearrange themselves in the fading light. The desert stretched silent around him, its vast emptiness magnifying the weight of his discovery. If the prophecy truly warned about humanity, then what had the ancients seen that justified such fear? And worse, what if Rourke's instinct to treat it as a weapon would only prove them right? The wind carried grains of sand across the glyphs, hissing softly like a voice at the edge of hearing. Marcus bent down, brushing the surface clean, his fingers trembling despite himself. For the briefest moment, the etched lines shimmered faintly, as though acknowledging his touch. His heart hammered. He pulled back, shaken, and forced himself to look away. Behind him, camp generators sputtered to life, throwing pale light across the trench. He stared once more at the slab, its alien symbols refusing to yield their final meaning. A sense of inevitability coiled in his chest. This was no artifact of dead history. It was a message, still alive, still waiting. And now, humanity had answered its call. The conference chamber inside Geneva's United Nations complex was a hollow arena of polished wood and cold light, where words weighed more than weapons. Dr. Marcus Hale sat at the oval table, shoulders tense, his notebook resting in front of him like a shield. Delegates spoke in sharp turns, each voice cutting across the room with practiced rhetoric. Some dismissed the artifact as exaggerated speculation. Others pressed for decisive measures, their tone sharpened by fear. Marcus had endured such posturing for years, but never had the stakes felt so immediate. He listened, pen tapping against the page, and waited for the moment to cut through the noise. Colonel David Rourke sat 2 seats away, posture rigid, his gaze never leaving Marcus. The colonel had spoken already, delivering a precise argument: humanity must be ready to defend itself, and alien technology uncovered in the desert must be secured for military application. His words resonated with several delegates, their expressions betraying both unease and agreement. Marcus had countered, but his explanation that the monolith was a warning, not a gift, had been drowned in the tide of political agendas. When the chair of the session finally turned to him, Marcus rose. His voice carried none of the authority of uniform or flag, yet its calm conviction cut through. He described the glyphs he had deciphered, the repeated references to children of flesh, and the unsettling implication that humanity itself had been marked as a threat. He spoke of ancient hands leaving behind a message, not to glorify mankind, but to contain it. As the words settled over the chamber, silence followed, heavy and unwilling. Rourke broke it with the force of a hammer. "Speculation," he said, his voice resonant. "We cannot gamble the future of our species on translations and guesses. What we do know is that the artifact is active, emitting signals, and possibly calling others. If they come, we must be ready to meet them with strength, not hesitation." Marcus turned toward him. "And if our strength is what fulfills the prophecy, if by choosing force, we confirm the fear they recorded millennia ago?" Rourke's expression did not flicker. "Then we'll face it as we've faced every storm in our history. By surviving." The session dissolved without resolution, and Marcus left the chamber with a weight pressing against his chest. Outside, rain streaked down the glass facade, blurring the city into grey. He stood for a long moment, watching pedestrians hurry along the streets, umbrellas bobbing like muted colors in a washed-out painting. To them, the world was unchanged. To him, the ground beneath humanity had shifted forever. That night, alone in his hotel room, Marcus spread out his notes. The patterns of the alien script sprawled across the pages, each line a puzzle piece refusing to settle. His mind churned with possibilities, but his focus returned always to the same phrase. Children of flesh. Anticipation. Fear. He imagined ancient voices arguing just as the delegates had, their verdict etched into stone, preserved against time. The thought haunted him, perhaps the architects had seen too clearly. His laptop chimed. A secure message flashed across the screen, unsigned but unmistakably military. Coordinates. A request for his presence at a facility outside Berlin. Rourke's hand was obvious even in anonymity. Marcus hesitated, then closed the machine. Curiosity gnawed at him, but so did unease. 2 days later, he found himself escorted through fortified gates and sterile corridors, the hum of generators echoing faintly through steel walls. At the heart of the facility, the monolith from the desert stood reconstructed under glaring lights, its fractured surface encased in scaffolding. But it was no longer inert. From the crack pulsed a faint luminescence, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. Marcus approached slowly, his breath shallow. Scientists monitored consoles, their voices hushed. Soldiers stood guard, weapons slung but ready. And there, beside the pulsing glow, stood Rourke, arms folded behind his back. "It's been waking," Rourke said, eyes fixed on the fissure. "At first, just faint surges. Then more. Now we're detecting structured signals. Patterns, too precise to be random." Marcus's throat tightened. "It's communicating. Or calling." The glow brightened briefly, then dimmed. A projection shimmered in the air above the slab, flickering at first, then stabilizing into a form. Not quite human, not quite machine, but something between, tall, translucent, features blurred as though refusing to be defined. The chamber fell silent. The figure's voice emerged without sound, yet every mind in the room heard it as clearly as thought. "We are the architects," it intoned. "We built walls against the storm. We chained the fire before it spread. If the bonds break, all will burn." The words pressed against Marcus's chest, each syllable carrying the weight of centuries. His hand gripped his notebook, though he had nothing left to write. Around him, scientists stared in stunned disbelief, soldiers shifted uneasily, and Rourke's face hardened with grim resolve. Marcus found his voice. "What storm? What fire?" The figure turned, as if its gaze could pierce through him. "You. The children of flesh. You are the storm. You are the fire. And you will consume the stars." The projection flickered, its form collapsing into light before vanishing entirely. Silence thundered in its wake. Rourke was the first to speak. "Now we know." His tone was steady, but there was an edge Marcus recognized, the edge of a man who saw opportunity even in a curse. Marcus turned to him, voice low. "If humanity is the threat they feared, then arming ourselves will not protect us, it will prove them right." Rourke met his gaze. "Or it will prove them wrong. Prophesize our chains, hail. I don't intend to let one dictate the fate of our species." The tension between them tightened into something unspoken but sharp. Marcus looked once more at the dark slab, the faint glow still lingering deep within its crack, and felt the stirrings of inevitability. The prophecy was not a relic of the past. It was alive, shaping choices in the present, and its judgment loomed closer with every decision made. As he left the facility, escorted through sterile corridors and back into the cold night, Marcus understood what had begun. The discovery had awakened more than ancient voices. It had drawn attention, not just from Earth's governments, but from beyond. Somewhere in the silence of space, others had heard. And they were listening. The storm broke quietly, not with thunder but with silence. Marcus Hale stood at the edge of the Berlin facility's observation deck, staring at the darkened monolith below. The projection of the architects had not returned since its cryptic declaration, yet the structure pulsed faintly with its strange rhythm, as though keeping time with his own heartbeat. He had filled pages of notes in the days since, revisiting the sequence of glyphs, their warnings more vivid now than ever. Each translation circled back to the same truth: humanity was not chosen. Humanity was feared. Across the chamber, Colonel David Rourke conferred with military aides, their hushed voices punctuated by the soft click of boots on polished steel. He carried himself with the same deliberate calm as always, but Marcus noticed the subtle changes. The colonel no longer looked at the artifact with suspicion alone. He looked at it as a man eyes a weapon waiting to be claimed. The unease between them had grown sharper with every passing hour. Marcus sought understanding, hoping the prophecy's full text might reveal a path other than destruction. Rourke sought advantage, preparing for the possibility that alien civilizations were already mobilizing against Earth. Both men knew the clock was ticking. The first confirmation arrived without ceremony. A technician rushed into the chamber, breathless, clutching a data pad. "Signal intercept," she stammered. "Not from Earth. Not from our satellites. It's external, directional. Triangulated to the outer system." The room hushed. Rourke took the pad, his expression tightening. They heard the beacon. Marcus's chest constricted. "Who?" "Whoever was meant to hear it," Rourke replied grimly. The next days unraveled in a blur of urgency. Intelligence networks confirmed the approach of vessels entering the solar system, alien craft, their silhouettes unlike anything catalogued in human aerospace. Governments scrambled to posture, to negotiate, to prepare. For Marcus, the reality was worse than any translation. The prophecy was not a relic of forgotten fears. It was unfolding, line by line, in real time. He immersed himself in the fragments, hunting for context he might have missed. In one passage, he discovered a sequence describing the storm that adapts without end. The phrasing was peculiar, but the meaning was unmistakable. Humanity's strength lay in its relentless adaptability, its refusal to break, its capacity to bend and grow stronger under strain. It was that trait, exalted on Earth as survival, that the architects had feared most. To them, humanity was not merely dangerous, it was inevitable. Marcus pressed his pen so hard against the page that the ink bled. If the aliens now closing in shared that belief, Earth's existence itself would be on trial. When the first of the vessels appeared near the moon, humanity saw it not as salvation or partnership, but as judgment. The ship was colossal, a cathedral of light against the void, bristling with structures that shifted as though alive. Every broadcast from Earth was met with silence. Then came the ultimatum, projected into orbit and translated into every human tongue. The children of flesh will submit. The chains must hold. Defiance will prove the prophecy true. Panic rippled across the planet. In the halls of power, chaos boiled. Some leaders argued for surrender, believing survival depended on compliance. Others demanded immediate retaliation. At the center of it all, Marcus and Rourke clashed once more, their words sharper than the weapons waiting in orbit. Marcus slammed his notebook shut. "They are afraid of us. Don't you see? Their ultimatum proves it. The prophecy terrified them so much that even now, after millennia, they'd rather enslave us than risk what we might become." Rourke's reply was steady, his tone cold as steel. "Which means surrender is death by another name. They fear us? Good. Let them. Fear is leverage. And leverage is survival. You'll condemn us all," Marcus said. "Every act of defiance feeds their conviction that we're the storm they warned against." The colonel leaned closer, voice low. "Or it proves that no one dictates humanity's fate but humanity itself." The debate ended not with agreement, but with fire. During tense negotiations in orbit, a skirmish erupted. Whether by misunderstanding or design, one of the alien vessels opened fire on a human station, annihilating it in a burst of light that lit the upper atmosphere. The loss of civilian lives galvanized the planet. What had been fractured resolve coalesced into fury. Humanity struck back not with matching fleets or superior weapons, but with ingenuity born of desperation. Engineers hacked captured fragments of alien tech, turning communications drones into crude defense grids. Pilots adapted old aerospace fighters with jury-rigged energy shields ripped from salvaged debris. Civilians organized underground networks, creating resistance webs faster than the invaders could sever them. Marcus watched it unfold with a mixture of dread and awe. The prophecy's words echoed in every act of defiance, adapt without end. Each assault meant to break humanity only made it stronger. Each loss birthed innovation, unity, resilience. The architects had seen this long ago. He now understood why they had feared it. One evening, as he pored over his translations, Rourke entered the chamber, his uniform scorched, his face lined with exhaustion but lit with grim triumph. "We forced them back from orbit today," he said. "They didn't expect us to learn so quickly. Didn't expect us to turn their own systems against them. They'll learn the hard way what happens when you corner humanity." Marcus looked up, his voice heavy. "You're proving them right." Rourke's eyes held no apology. "Maybe. But I'd rather be feared than erased." The weight of those words pressed down on Marcus. The conflict between them was no longer theoretical. It was etched in fire across the sky, written into the blood of the fallen, and carried in the defiance of those who refused to yield. Humanity was the prophecy, living and uncontainable. Whether that meant salvation or damnation no longer belonged to the architects. It belonged to them. Outside, the night sky glimmered with unfamiliar stars, alien vessels maneuvering in silence, human defenses burning against the void. Marcus stood at the observation window, the reflection of his face caught between the glass and the stars beyond. He no longer knew whether he feared the aliens who sought to chain them, or the unrelenting storm rising within his own people. Either way, the prophecy had awakened, and there was no turning back. The war had become a rhythm, a brutal cadence of strike and counterstrike that left Earth scarred but unbroken. Marcus Hale moved through the underground command center beneath Geneva, its concrete walls vibrating with the distant roar of bombardments. Screens flickered with tactical maps, glowing red where alien fleets pressed hardest, green where human resistance still held. The air smelled of metal and ozone, a reminder that even here, safety was an illusion. He carried his notebook like a relic, its pages now filled with fragments of the prophecy interwoven with observations of the present, the past bleeding into the future with every line. Colonel David Rourke stood at the center of the room, issuing orders with the same implacable calm that had come to define him. His uniform was worn now, its fabric torn at the edges, but his bearing had only grown sharper. To the men and women under his command, he had become a symbol of human defiance. To Marcus, he was the embodiment of the prophecy's darkest warning. Yet he could not deny the man's effectiveness. Where governments faltered, Rourke's unyielding resolve held the fragments of humanity together. Reports poured in. Alien forces had regrouped near Mars, preparing another assault. Smaller detachments probed Earth's defenses, testing weaknesses. Every analyst predicted collapse, yet every assault was met with adaptations that should have been impossible for a fractured planet to achieve in so little time. Marcus had seen it in the eyes of civilians who turned scavenged machines into weapons, in soldiers who learned alien strategies mid-battle and bent them back upon their enemies. Each act of resistance was proof. Humanity was exactly what the prophecy had described: unyielding, unpredictable, uncontainable. As night fell across Europe, the command center dimmed, and Marcus found himself alone with Rourke. The colonel studied the star maps glowing on the central screen, his face illuminated in cold light. "They underestimated us," Rourke said quietly. "They thought we'd fracture, beg, crawl. Instead we've taught them fear." Marcus approached, his voice low but urgent. "At what cost? You've turned us into the prophecy they dreaded. Every act of defiance feeds their conviction that we're the fire destined to consume the stars." Rourke finally turned to him. "And maybe we are. Maybe that's our destiny. You speak of fear as though it's a curse. I see it as the only language they understand. If fear keeps them from erasing us, then we'll make them choke on it." The words struck Marcus with the weight of inevitability. He wanted to argue, to insist that another path remained, but the evidence was undeniable. Humanity had become what the architects feared, not because of choice alone, but because survival demanded it. The prophecy had not created the storm. The storm had always been there, waiting. Moments later, alarms blared. The alien fleet had entered Earth's atmosphere, massive structures blotting out the stars as they descended. The command center erupted into motion, officers relaying coordinates, screens flashing with incoming trajectories. Rourke's voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. "Deploy every reserve. Bring the orbital defenses online. And tell the people, this is the hour we stand or fall." Marcus pressed his notebook to his chest, then followed Rourke to the upper deck, where the world shook with the opening salvos of the final battle. The sky above Geneva blazed with fire, alien ships descending like gods of judgment, their weapons tearing through the night. Yet humanity answered not with despair, but with ingenuity. Modified drones swarmed the invaders, energy grids shimmered with jury-rigged shields, and ground forces struck with precision born of desperation. Rourke directed the defense with ruthless clarity, adapting strategies in moments that would have taken others weeks to devise. Marcus watched in awe and dread as the colonel embodied the prophecy's words, turning chaos into strength, fear into power. For all his doubts, Marcus realized that without Rourke's defiance, Earth would already be ash. A deafening impact rocked the city as one of the alien leviathans descended lower, its hull glowing with energy. Marcus gripped the railing, his voice raw. If we destroy them, we confirm the prophecy. If we fail, we're erased. There's no victory in this. Rourke's reply was a growl, his eyes locked on the blazing sky. There's victory in survival. That's enough. The alien leviathan opened fire, obliterating a swath of the city. Screams echoed through the command center as communications faltered. Rourke seized the console, issuing a final order: channel every remaining defense into one coordinated strike. The plan was reckless, desperate, but there was no alternative. Marcus stood frozen, his heart torn between horror and hope. He knew this moment would decide not only the battle, but humanity's place in the cosmos. If they triumphed, the galaxy's fear would harden into certainty. If they fell, the prophecy would end with them. The defenses roared to life. Missiles streaked through the sky, drones swarmed like hornets, and hacked alien cannons turned against their makers. The Leviathan shuddered under the onslaught, its glowing hull cracking, its vast form trembling as fire consumed it. Then, with a thunderous detonation, it collapsed in flames, a sun born and extinguished in the same breath. Silence followed, broken only by the ragged cheers of those who had survived. Across the command center, officers wept, embraced, and stared at the screens in disbelief. Humanity had done the impossible. The invincible had fallen. Rourke exhaled, his shoulders lowering for the first time in weeks. He turned to Marcus, his voice quiet but unshaken. Now they'll know. We're not prey. We're not children. We're the storm. Marcus met his gaze, torn between admiration and dread. The prophecy was fulfilled. Humanity had proven itself the fire that could not be contained. Yet as he looked out over the ruined city, the smoke rising to obscure the stars, he wondered whether the architects had been right all along. The night sky flickered with burning debris, fragments of the Leviathan drifting like embers. Humanity had survived, but the cost was clear. They had announced themselves to the galaxy not as allies, not as partners, but as something far more dangerous. Marcus felt the truth press against him, heavy and undeniable. The prophecy had not been a curse carved in stone. It had been a warning, a plea to the future. And now the future belonged to them.